name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory forever.
I love listening to this particular gospel being proclaimed, because this isn't the only place in the scriptures, in the Gospels, where we hear about Christ distributing the loaves and fishes. When he gives the Beatitudes in a different gospel, and we hear him saying, "Blessed are this, blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are these and that." This is also that moment when he's teaching them on the side of the hill, and he feeds them. But it's very simple in Matthew's gospel. It's a very simple story. It's a very simple image that we get. They didn't have much to eat. Everybody was doing their thing. He brought them out. He was teaching them and preaching the gospel to them. And his apostles were like, "Hey, Jesus, come on. You better let these folks get home and cook their dinners and stuff. It's getting late. And there's nothing to eat here. There's no stores up here. The vendors are all closing in the markets. It's about that time where people need to finish their day out and prepare for the next day." And Christ, on purpose, of course, he kept them on purpose until that time, so that the time would have bled out and there wouldn't have been time to do what they needed to do in their normal day. And he says, "You feed them." Yeah, Jesus, there's no stores up here. There's no vendors, nobody selling bread up here. This is a deserted place. You took us on a walk and talked a long time. What do you mean, feed them? All we have is 5 loaves and a couple of measly fish. Most of us plan to go to the market ourselves on the way home, but it's not going to be open. What are you talking about? You feed them. And so they did. They obeyed him. It's another one of those moments where they were very incredulous, even though they had learned to trust him. You know, I would think that when he did that thing when he called Peter and Andrew, and he says, "Put out again with the nets." You know, these people were, again, at the end of their day and had caught next to nothing, and it was a terrible day fishing. Put out again, lower your nets. And darned if they didn't catch their nets filled to breaking. That should have been the first, don't ask questions, just do, with Christ. "You feed them," he says to them. And so they began to distribute the bread and parcel out the fish. And there were 5,000 men and 5,000 wives, presumably, and their children. So we can assume they had 11 children each. That's a good number. So I don't know what the math is on that. Jeremy could tell me. But that's a lot of people. That's like 20,000, 30,000 people, something like that. That's not possible to feed people with 5 loaves of bread. I don't know how big the loaves were, but I can't imagine them being much bigger than a loaf of bread like we know. 30,000 people are eating. And at the end of things, it says that they gathered 12 baskets of leftovers. You see what he's doing here? He's painting a picture. Now, it's an image, it's an iconic expression of truth. It's a great thing for us to hear, but it also happened. This is actually a real event. It isn't a parable. This really happened. They gathered up 12 baskets of abundance that he provided, and that only he could have provided, when everything was said and done. And he commanded his disciples to get into the boat. And he sent the people home, filled to the brim. No one was hungry. No one lacked anything. The Lord had provided. He gathered up his apostles and disciples with their 12 baskets. Let's get into the boat. And he sent them. We are watching him demonstrate the image of the church and the image of his abundance. He provided everything they needed, gathered it up into 12 baskets, recalling to them the 12 tribes, and sending his apostles back out. Get into the boat, the church, and go and feed my people. Go and call my people. Fill them with my abundance. This is an image of the church. This is an image of his providence for his people from the moment we heard, let us make man in our image. He's deming, I guess what they call that, my friend who was a Protestant pastor before he became Orthodox, he calls them object lessons. I didn't know what that meant, but evidently that's a preaching tool. And he'll do preaching, he did do preaching with, and he would do object lessons at least once a month on Sundays. This would have been an object lesson from Christ par excellence. Because it drew everything that they knew about God from the beginning, their experience of God's providence and abundance. It rooted them in the present, in their need, and it projected outward. There's a maxim sometimes in homiletical theory, or even just in giving a good motivational speech. Tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them, and then tell them what you told them. That's a good address. That's a good homily, evidently. Well, in this moment, Christ is telling them what they've been told, telling what he's going to tell them, telling them, and then telling them what he's going to, or what they've been told. This image that he leaves us with is the same thing. We stand in the middle of the boat. We are filled with his abundance. We come weekly, if not more often, to hear his word preached and to be filled with the great abundance. You see, it is unlikely that one man would change the world. It took one man to alter the course of our very existence. It took 12 guys only to spread this gospel message to the whole world. I don't know how many of us are here today. I don't know, 50, 70, I don't know. Think of what 70 people could do, having been sent by Christ. Get in the boat. Go. Feed my people. I'll make it possible. What are you talking about, Jesus? I can't feed everybody. Yes, you can, because I can. And because of the cross, so can you. Take up your cross. Go and feed my people. It's not just for the clergy. It's not just for the priests, the deacons, and bishops, and the monks. It's for you. You pick up your cross. You take the Lord's abundance and you get in the boat and you go feed his people. How is it possible? Through humility. If you pick up your cross, you're embracing humility. How can you feed his people? You feed them humility. You take the message of the cross out into the world. You subdue the earth through humility and love. This is the Lord's abundance. This is the miracle of this gospel message. We've heard the Great Commission, go therefore and baptize all nations and whatnot. But this is also the Great Commission. Go and feed my people. And look, I just made it possible, didn't I? All things are possible with him. On our own, we could do nothing. But he said, get in the boat and go. I made it possible for you to go and feed my people. Take up your cross and follow me. Following Christ is feeding his people. He's living selflessly in humility and feeding his people. Starts at home. Starts here. if it becomes the context of your life to feed His people, He will make it possible. You just have to get in the boat and go. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory to Christ.